Hey guys, welcome to JReviews. I am Iceman and the games covered today is Syndicate 1993 and Syndicate 2012. The original Syndicate was released in 1993 and developed by Bullfrog Productions. It is a strategy game which has you in control of 4 agents through which you complete objectives from eliminating targets, capturing and persuading a person to join you and more. It had one expansion titled Syndicate Plus, which was a new shorter campaign. Syndicate 2012, which from here on I'll just refer to as 2012, on the other hand was developed by Starbreeze Studios and is a first-person shooter with you in control of one agent who has independent control of themselves and has much more of an extensive narrative. The objectives of the levels in that game are generally to get to the other side of a level or beat a boss. The original is a strategy game set in a cyberpunk universe, where megacorps, or in this game's case syndicates, rule the world. Syndicates, much like megacorps, are huge corporations spread across the world with power on a greater scale than even governments and militaries. With that power, they all seek worldwide domination and so openly battle against each other. In the world of Syndicate, the populace of the world has a chip in their heads known literally as chip, to alter their perceptions of reality and to interface better with technology. It is through that technology that the syndicates exert their control and can influence them. As illustrated wonderfully in the game's intro, everyday people are just meatbags, or things to take and use as they wish. Once a person is captured, they are reprogrammed to serve the syndicate and thereafter have no control of themselves. They live and die for them and are known as agents. The original game is very light on narrative, save for the initial introduction video and brief details given for mission introductions. The rest is left to the player's imagination from what they see in the game. The initial intro video gives a greater insight into the overall syndicate mentality. 2012 in comparison has far more in the way of videos, details provided in text logs you can find throughout the game and through dialogue with other characters. It has you in control of an agent named Miles Kilo, who essentially is a blank slate, as you never see any inklings of personality or emotion from him over the course of the game. The feel of the original was quite unique for its time, as there was nothing quite like it out there. It exudes a cyberpunk feel and a complete lack of care for civilians and police. All that matters is achieving your goals and exerting your syndicate's reach in the world, through whatever means are necessary. In the levels themselves, you're in a city, battling rival syndicates and enemy forces whilst completing objectives. There is no game really to compare this to from that period of time, as it truly was unique. The isometric viewpoint gives you the feeling that you're watching your agents from a distance and sending them orders. 2012 feels like fairly typical first-person shooter style stuff, with some visual nods to the Deus Ex series. It certainly feels very cyberpunk by the abilities that you can use and the overall look of the world that you're in. This one reminded me of several games, for example Call of Duty and Fear during the combat sections, and Deus Ex via the augments and abilities. There is certainly a good atmosphere to the levels, with you feeling like you're in that universe. Graphically, the original game was good for its time, though viewed with modern eyes will look quite primitive to some. There are some nice details like Blade Runner style advertisements on billboards, and their videos certainly look nice. 2012 in comparison looks substantially better, obviously being a much more modern game, and through its first person perspective. The dark mode stuff in particular looks excellent. 2012 definitely is a nice looking game. As far as cutscenes go, the original does not have these at all. You just go in, do your objective, and then go back to your main screen, and that's it. 2012 uses cutscenes quite a bit in comparison, often with the player not having control of themselves and guided through a dialogue sequence. Music is an area where the original game excels. Whilst it goes for MIDI style music, you have calm music playing in the levels, which then quickly changes to more fast tempo style stuff when in combat with rival syndicates, which really adds to the tension during those segments. The one negative I would give this game on music is that outside of missions there is no music at all, just silence. 2012 goes for more of an atmospheric style for the most part, though there is some nice music that plays whilst you're reading logs and text information. The music that plays during combat is a bit of a mixed bag. as it's a Skrillex remix of the original game's combat music. I couldn't stand it, as it lacks the tension of the original game's tempo. Gameplay is the area of biggest difference between the two games. The original has you in control of 4 agents, which as previously mentioned has you sending them through missions and completing objectives, with the overall end game goal being of world domination. You control agents via the mouse to give orders, and can either manually shoot via the right mouse button, or can pump drugs into your agents via pressing both mouse buttons together, or dragging the drug meters across, which will cause them to act on their own independently. As you move through the city levels, your agents will move on foot for the most part, but will need to use vehicles in some sections to get past security gates, and you can use them for faster movement. In addition, some levels have trains that you can use. When not in the missions themselves, there are several layers that you have access to, much like the XCOM games. From this section, for example, you have the world layer, where you can set taxation rates for the sections of the world that you control, and select the next territory that you wish to attempt to take over. You also have access to a squad selection, research and mission objectives screen, where you can equip your agents with their weapons, items and augmentations, conduct research into more advanced technologies, and read up on the mission objectives of the region you have chosen to take on. Research is an extremely important thing to do in this game, as that is how you gain access to better technology for your agents. You can research better weapons and items, as well as better augmentations. Weapons come in various flavors, from projectile weapons like Uzis, pistols, and my favorite weapon in the game, the minigun. You also have access to flamethrowers, missile launchers, and laser weaponry. Augmentations is important technology for your agents, as they enable longer running, better health, improved armor, and being able to handle the drug stimulants for longer periods of time. The income you gain from the territories you control is the resource through which you conduct your research. So the more territories that you control, the greater the income you will receive, and thus the faster that you will be able to complete your research. Research occurs over time, so you can leave your computer and go do something else whilst research takes place, or go and do missions where once you're back again, the research will often have completed by then. The game starts off relatively easy, but as you progress it gets considerably more difficult, with the final mission being extremely hard. Overall level structure is open, as you have entire cities and towns to explore, travelling to wherever you like. Moving on to 2012, it has you in control of one singular agent who works for the Eurocorp Syndicate and has the free will to be independent. As the game is a first-person shooter, the controls are pretty atypical FPS, with movement via the keyboard and shooting via the mouse. You are limited to 2 weapons at a time, like many modern FPS games. Unfortunately, you cannot take the weapons from one mission to another, so are limited to only the weapons present in the current mission. Shooting is your normal left button to shoot, right button to aim. Weapons in the game are for the most part fairly generic, if you've played your fair share of first-person shooter games in the past, from machine guns, sniper rifles, grenade launchers, etc. The cooler weapons for the most part do not show up until towards the end of the game, like enemy-seeking energy rifles and plasma beam style weaponry. The minigun from the original makes an appearance, but is not in the game for very long. One of the cool abilities in this game is the use of Dart, which slows down the game's speed considerably, allows for quick hacking, or breaching as this game calls it, of various targets, and makes it easy to target and eliminate enemies. It only runs for a certain amount of time, so you'll have to wait for it to recharge before you can use it again. Other abilities you gain access to across the game are a suicide ability that forces an enemy to kill themselves in explosive fashion, and backfire, which knocks enemies to the ground. Unlike Deus Ex, the hacking abilities are quite limited, and it is just a matter of holding the mouse button down till it hits the end of the breach bar to successfully hack something. Beyond that, it's typical first-person shooter style stuff. You proceed from one end of the level to another, and after every few levels usually take on a boss of some kind. The boss battles in this game are excellent, and all of them feature a unique style of enemy, with their own unique behaviours and attacks. My favourite was the first boss, who could split himself off into fake holographic versions of himself, and was quite a challenging battle. Overall, the combat in this game is excellent, and is by far the best thing about it. Later in the game, you get to see the inside of the Eurocorp facility itself, which was great from a cyberpunk perspective to the inside of a megacorp. Level structure is 100% linear. There is no alternate paths, just a straight path from the start to the end of the levels. This was one early negative I noticed with the game. More open levels would have been great to see, as it makes the levels feel very scripted, which was not present in the original games at all. The greatest negative to the game, however, occurs towards the 3/4 way mark, where the game forces you, whether you like it or not, against your syndicate, telling you that you have had no control over yourself and have been under their direct control the whole time, whilst at that exact moment forcing you to turn against your syndicate, whether you like it or not, with no choice at all. It paints syndicates as the evil bad guys, and that overthrowing them is needed. So a game called Syndicate, where you're bringing down the syndicates. Right. That's just stupid, and it was clear that the developers had not played the earlier games at all, which is a major disservice towards those games. In regards to multiplayer, that was not present at all in the original game. 2012, however, does, and it's great, with 4-player squad versus computer-controlled enemies, with various objectives to complete. This side of 2012 is like a completely different game with far more in common with the original game. For this mode, you begin by creating your own syndicate, much like in the original game, with you picking giving them a syndicate name overall, picking the symbol that you want for it, the colours of it, etc. Then pick the agent that you wish to play as, choose your layout of weapons that you want to use, and spend the amount of points that are available on upgrades. The upgrade system here is very similar to Call of Duty in that you have the upgrade trees of your agent, similar to how it is in the single player, except far more extensive. In addition, you have weapons research where you can spend points to unlock upgrades for the various weapons, but then you need to run research on them during the mission segments themselves. Thirdly, you have an upgrade system similar to how it is for the weapons, where you unlock bonuses for abilities, but then you need to research them first, much like the weapons. The abilities in co-op are far more extensive than in the single-player campaign, which makes me wonder why all of these upgrade systems weren't present in the single player at all. It's baffling. You then go off into the co-op missions with up to 3 other squad mates to complete the objectives of the particular mission. These range from stealing hard drives and organic tissue samples to eliminating a particular target, etc, etc. Many of the missions are named after locations from the original game. The existence of being able to create your own syndicate, conduct research, and 4-player squads was sorely lacking from the single-player campaign, and is far more in line with the original with actual proper links gameplay-wise. Whoever it was in Starbreeze that handled this side of the game definitely took inspiration from the original. The co-op is vastly superior gameplay and really should have been the focus of the game overall, rather than the boring single-player content. That said, it's not perfect and could definitely use improvement to have more commonalities with the original, but it makes for a great starting point for something great. I'd have liked for more missions to be included, actual territory control, and for the inclusion of AI-controlled agents for when you're unable to find anyone to play with. For players of the original, the co-op side of 2012 is what I would highly recommend that you play over the single-player campaign. The biggest hurdle present day in 2021, however, is that there's barely anyone on the servers anymore. If it was not for the assistance of the user Anton Andreev, I wouldn't have been able to even see the co-op campaign. I'd left the game running for 30 minutes waiting for an extra person and no one came along. So it looks as though the fan base is considerably low, and that's a shame as the co-op is great and definitely worth checking out, even if it feels like Call of Duty a fair bit. In regards to bugs, the original game had major issues with this, with it being quite common for the game to crash when going into and out of missions. In more modern updates of this game, however, this appears to have been resolved, as it did not happen once on my last playthrough of it. 2012 has next to no bugs present. On one level, an enemy got stuck in place and stopped moving, but beyond that, no other bugs were witnessed at all. And now for the moment you've been waiting for. Syndicate 1993 versus the 2012 release. Now on to the big question. Which is the better game out of the original 1993 game or the 2012 release? For me, there is zero doubt in my mind of which is the better game. The original game is hands down the vastly superior game. It has far more strategy, the ability to choose which missions you take on, and even the levels themselves are far more open and varied in their challenges. The 2012 release, in comparison, has far more scripted levels. You can only choose which weapons that the levels designers have made available to you in addition. Compared to the original, where you had a squad selection screen where you could choose what weapons to take with you, and research. Secondly, the original in no way is trying to push a message, unlike the 2012 release, which is pushing a strong "syndicates are bad" style message. The original may not have the extensive narrative compared to the 2012 release, but is far more of a layered experience, from its missions, to research, to worldwide management. The original also has no problem at all in letting you play as the bad guys, which the 2012 release struggles with greatly. However, the 2012 version of the game excels in the multiplayer, as mentioned previously. That is its best point, and that is the place that you should spend the majority of your time for a good and fun experience, because it's far more dynamic. You actually have good character upgrade options, and if you can manage to find people to play with, it is really damn fun. Overall, the original Syndicate is hands down the far better game to play, and has replayability behind it due to its more dynamic nature. If you're looking for a more modern Syndicate-like game to play, then Satellite Reign would make for a far better alternative, due to its similar nature to the original games, and it was developed by ex-developers of the Syndicate sequel, Syndicate Wars, making it the best choice to play. Syndicate 2012, in comparison, is at times a fairly generic first-person shooter, but it does have some good parts to it. I mean, I really enjoyed my first 3/4 of gameplay, up until they took control away from you and took away your ability to choose. But it's still a good game to play, and I would recommend playing it through at least once. Just that if you have played the earlier Syndicate games, it's really going to annoy you when that point in the game happens. But I still would recommend playing through at least once. And that concludes my review and comparison of Syndicate's 1993 and the 2012 release. If you've enjoyed this video and would like to see more videos in this series, be sure to hit the subscribe button, and also just check out my channel for further videos, and you'll find out what else is available. And with that, this is Iceman of JReviews signing out. Guys, have a good one.